Hi, Seth Kahan here. I'm so happy to have Chris Cooper with me today. Chris is a leadership expert and the creator of Chris Cooper Business Elevation, a powerful approach to helping leaders and their teams reach their full potential. I actually met Chris through his podcast when he just finished the 622nd interview. It's one of the longest running business shows in the world. And I also want to make sure that we touch on his Elevation Collective. It's a community that he has begun with extraordinary leaders who really care about creating more good in the world. And if I was going to say anything about Chris, it would be those last few phrases. I believe Chris really cares about creating more good in the world. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Seth. Wonderful to be with you.
Oh, it's so wonderful to be with you. You have an exceptional vocation at this point in your life, but I would like to start maybe and just give our listeners an opportunity to rewind, go back maybe a few decades, and tell us, how did you get here? How did you end up doing this? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Wow. Well, I'll start with my childhood. So I was born in a northern steel town in England. My father was a steel worker, so was my grandfather. And the expectation was that I would join them and go in the steelworks as well, as young lads tend to do in that part of the world. But I've got an old story that I'll share with you. And it's funny, actually. I was reminded of this when I was visiting my father for 4 days when he was about to pass. And I thought about his story. And I realized it was actually that one of the pivotal moments in my life. So you sort of picture me at maybe 12 or 13 years of age with my father. And we go to Scunthorpe Steelworks, where my dad had been working for many years. And we walk around with lots of other fathers and their young boys and have a look around. And I guess it's a little bit like McDonald's Happy Meals, get them in early. And so we're walking around and there's molten metal flying around and it's dark and it's noisy. And my dad showed me the train tracks where he unfortunately had to pick out some body parts at one stage because health and safety in those days wasn't great. And afterwards, we went into this room for a drink and some sandwiches, and a tall man walked in. I remember him being really big, and he walked over to me and he said, "Hello, when you're younger, are you going to come and work for us?" And I looked at him and I said, "You must be joking."
Wow.
And my dad was fuming because it turned out he was the chief executive of British Steel, who my dad had never even met before. So we got home in the car. Dad's yelling at me. "Oh, how could you say this?" He was the chief executive of the Steelworks. When we got home, he calmed down. I said, "But Dad, you don't like it there. You don't like working there. Why would I want to work there?" And I think when I look back at that moment, what I realized was that there was maybe more for me. And I've looked back over that experience, and what I've always wanted to do is to help leaders. And I think I went into leadership roles. I worked with lots of companies and experienced all of that. But I guess deep down, I wanted to create places where my dad would have loved to work and not had to work the way that he did, very, very hard, but with, some reward, but often with an awful lot of stress and conditions not being great. So I think, I sort of escaped. I ended up becoming a graduate, and I worked for a number of different companies. Mars, the confectionery firm, was one of those. I worked with them for 7 years, and I worked in sales, marketing, procurement, HR, training.
Wow.
I then was headhunted to go and work for a company called United Biscuits, where I ended up running procurement divisions, which was really fascinating. I ended up with teams of people in France, Belgium, Holland, Spain, Poland, Finland, and at one stage had an ingredients role with responsibility for 15 factories. I ended up then going into the pub industry, where my final role was logistic quality and forecasting director, making sure that 5,500 pubs received the right drinks and foods and services. Before escaping that, because if I look at some of the diagnostic work I've done, it wasn't really always in my flow. It was too detailed for me. I was good at the relationships and good at the strategy and the people bits, but it was incredible amount of detail with 5,500 pubs. And so I set up a procurement consultancy with partners, and we grew that to a few £1 million of turnover in 3 years. Ended up with about 25 people as linked in with doing work for us. But I then had a bit of an epiphany. We had our first child, and I thought, am I ever going to be at home? Because I was always away. I didn't want to get to a point where I just saw my child or children at weekend. And I, my wife might have left me if I kept on going the way I was going. But, I thought, family, I had to just visualize in my mind the next step for myself. And I thought people was the thing that I really love. And that's why I've been really happy. And I love the multicultural aspects as well. So that led 20 years ago, I think, maybe it's 19, to setting up my own business and a bit more flexible around the family so I could support. And I've worked with lots and lots of big companies through to entrepreneurial ones, and and I found a big niche in insurance that I'd done, and worked with about 20 companies in that area, developing teams, leaders and people. And then during that time set up the podcast, and it's led to the Innovation Collective community as well. So from a business sort of work perspective, that's what I've done. But I guess taking care to make sure that I get to see my family and children and have a balanced life so I can enjoy some of the things that I love to do as well.
That's wonderful. I'm sure that it improves your performance too. I know it certainly has mine when you're living a more balanced life, or at least striving for it. It helps in so many.
I'm probably a better guitar player than I would have been if I kept on doing that. I see the guitar behind me.
So when 20 years ago, when you set up shop for yourself, what was one of your early experiences working with leaders and teams that you remember as an inspiring experience for yourself, that validated the choices or the path you were on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm thinking back now to, it was a company called Primary General Insurance, and I won a tender to provide a number of different programs for them. And so I did programs around, being a leader of people, programs, a sales program. Actually, no, that came a little bit later. So I did tons of coaching programs to help the regional directors learn how to coach. And then a strange thing happened in that they told me that it was going well. And they said, we've got a pitch around sales training. You're not going to get it, but if you want to throw your hat in, well, anyway, I won that as well. And so I ended up with, and probably the person who was my biggest critic wasn't so sure about me, has actually since referred 20 companies to me that I've worked for.
Wow.
So that was a piece of work I was really, really proud of, because it was, it was early on. It involved the development of about over 100 people in the company. I think what started to happen that I particularly had an impact on me was, I remember I'd not met the chief executive, and I got a call from the chief executive's assistant saying, would he come down to London and meet him? And I turn up at I was going to go into his office and say hello. And he looks at me and he says, so what have you done to my people? And I thought, what's coming next? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I come in the morning and I ask them how they are, and everybody's fantastic and everybody's happy. What on earth have you done? And so I said, well, what I did in the program is I integrated quite a lot of self-development and self-reflection as well. And one of those components was about energy and about the importance of it. And we did a little exercise with each of them. And I asked them just to say, how was it, when someone greets you in the morning, what are the responses you could get? And some people say, not very good, or crap even. I call that the crap zone. And then some people say fair to middling, or, pretty good, and that's the grey zone. And then there's some people who are fantastic and, great. And what I suggested is that, providing your body language which impacts that, how you are in the morning as a ripple effect. And if you go to your teams and you get that sense, you need to help lift them up to a higher level of frequency so they can perform. And so that was really lovely feedback. And it led to going and doing a 2.5-day program with the board. We took them all away. And also then they sent me to the venture capitalists to try and persuade them not to sell them.
Wow.
So for me, that was like the concept and the ideas. It was so rewarding, challenging, but so rewarding to see the lights come on in people's eyes.
Yeah.
I feel really proud, even, not probably 18 years ago, maybe 17, 18 years ago, but still now it's the ripple effects of that is still considerable, actually.
Yeah. So I think the next thing on the list that I shared at the beginning was the podcast. You must have started the podcast somewhere. How long ago did you start the podcast?
Yes, it was the 3rd of September, 2011, because that's actually I started on my wedding anniversary.
Oh, okay.
That was by coincidence. And what it came about was Voice America. I put a few recordings of interviews I'd done on my website, and Voice America approached me and they said, would you be interested in hosting a podcast on our platform? And I've been thinking about how maybe I could help to positively impact a lot more people. And I was really flattered until I discovered that I paid them rather than them paying me for the platform. But I thought about it and I did a trial with them and it went really, really well. And I've continued it now for 14 years and it's been so rewarding. They handle the technical sides and of the show, which I'm not very good at. So I try and stay in my flow. But it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done because at the age of 40, when I left the procurement consultancy, I remember my partner saying, how are you going to manage without all of my contact? And I just set a decision that I wanted to become a really well-connected person so that I could make a positive impact. And so I went from not a lot of connections at 40 to now with the 622 interviews in the community. I'm very blessed in knowing a few really interesting folk. I'm very proud, like you, to know and be able to call a friend.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I'm honored to have been on your podcast just recently. So if someone wants to find your podcast, what do they search for?
Yeah, they should search for the Business Elevation Show or Chris Cooper, and they can go to Apple, Amazon, Spotify, any of those areas, or to my website, or to Voice America Media. They'll find it on any of those platforms, and they can access it and listen to it in feeds and things like that from then on.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. As some know, I do Monday Morning Mojo, which is the reason I created that newsletter. It comes out every Monday morning here in the States, was because I love Monday mornings. And so many of my colleagues hated them. And I thought, well, I'd like to give them a little mojo, give them a little upbeat, at the beginning of the week, first thing Monday. And I find your show to be in that same spirit, but much deeper and more nuanced. And so I really, really enjoy the episode. Thank you so much for doing what you do.
Well, thank you and congratulations. And thank you to you for lifting people on a Monday morning because, it's really helpful to be lifted on a Monday morning and get moving quickly.
About a year ago, I thought I'm going to get rid of Monday Morning Mojo because I'm doing 2 newsletters, a podcast. It's like I thought, well, let me just use the top 20% right here, right? So I sent out a note to all of my folks and said, well, I'm discontinuing Monday Morning Mojo, and I got this flood of emails back. No, you can't do that. I depend on this. I love this and every day. And so it was very uplifting for me. But I also saw how important it is to give people a jolt of something inspirational and beautiful first thing. And it kind of comes back to what you were talking about helping your team leaders to have the energy to uplift their teams,
It's like you infect people, don't you, with positivity. And the thing I would say though is just to take care. If you go too extreme, that really puts people off as well. So right. It's a bit like, this as well as I do. What we have to do is try and sometimes we've got to match that person to bring them out. So there's care to be taken because if you'll come across as crazy if you're completely bouncing up and down, like a tiger full of enthusiasm. If somebody's feeling low, so it's matching them and then just helping them to move through that process. And I've got a client that I work with of 2 actually. They both seem to come to the same conclusion, and they when I go in, they sort of refer to it. Somebody again and say they're not very happy, and they come out smiling, and it's being Coopered is what they call it. By sticking plaster on them, let them get back out again, feeling a little bit better.
What an honorific term! Your name has been turned into a verb, and a good one at that, I'm sure. Wow. Well, let's talk about the collective, the Elevation Collective. I'm so intrigued by that. That's been my focus ever since I've met you. Talk a little bit about the collective. Introduce us to it.
Yeah, thank you. So the collective is a community of exceptional people who care about doing good in the world. And often what we get to is to a point in our life where, someone described it to me this morning actually in a really beautiful way. They said, imagine a boy in the sea, bobbing up and down. And if you imagine that you're swimming out to that boy, often what you might try, there's other people swimming, you might try and compete with them and try and win and be the best. And you can see that almost like the first part of your career. But on the second part, what you might realize is actually to get back to shore again, you want to make sure you're all looked after and cared for. And so I think I've moved into that part of my life where actually, I'm not interested in competition, competing with people. But what I do care about is helping people to get back to the shore and to, make a difference and impact the lives of others. So the collective is a community that was initiated during COVID when I thought about, how, with all this experience and the gifts I've got of knowing some interesting folk, how do I best make a difference with what I've had? How do I best help? And you can't do things all on your own. So what I thought, actually, I know so many fascinating people through the interviews. What if I introduced a few people who I really like and connect with and could help each other? And the first thing that happened was everybody was a bit nervous when they got them together and they realized who they were sitting with, because everybody, if you're humble, you don't have an ego, you're probably going to feel some imposter syndrome. And so they all felt a bit of imposter syndrome when they realized who they're actually sitting with. And what I've done is I've managed this gathering. I also am very clear with people that I'm not the guru, that I'm there to facilitate great conversation. How could I be when you're all super special? And so it's very much our community. And the community has grown. It grew from that first collective. Well, from their feedback was, Chris, there's something that we really like about this, because it's it's humble, it's gentle, but it's also has a point to it. And we have more meaningful conversations than we've had in other mastermind type groups. So I was told not to call it a mastermind because they said it's more than that. And what we've gradually done is built that to some other circles. And we have now a whole community, and we meet in circles online each month. I have groups where I bring events where I bring those circles together. Also, where I invite other people. And Seth, you came to one of those events last Tuesday. It was 33 of us that all kind of been invited. All amazing, really interesting folk. And some of those doing really great charitable work, others having sustainable brands or doing amazing work with companies, but doing it in a very caring and contributory way. And there's also people with sporting experiences and world records and all sorts of things. But together, when you're out there and you're doing tough work, having this community of people that you trust, that you respect, that know that they care about you, and they don't have an ego, they're just open to help you. It's created this community with a lot of love. So we just had our third annual event where people have got together and people have flown in from the United States and Sweden, Ireland, and as well as the UK. And oh my word, it was just such a special place. Just so much love and connection and kindness and friendship. And we met in a beautiful hotel that dated back to 1066. It had oak panel walls and a beautiful chandelier. I'm not sure quite approve of the Stag's Head, but that's probably was there a lot of years. And then beautiful gardens. And we had this place almost to ourselves, and it was just magical. And it enables us then to go back and re-energize for another year ahead before we come together. We've also June, one of our members, Molly Bedingkill, is a beautiful charity called Global Angels. A group of us went out to Kenya, to Tsavo, and we helped, we supported, and we've helped to attract some funding into that project as well. So the aim of the community is amplifying good, and we want people to do well with their businesses, with their social endeavors as well, because it's important. Because if your focus is poverty, you can't end poverty. If you're in poverty yourself, generally. Maybe Mother Teresa might have been able to do that, but not many people can. So that's important. But what we want to do is just help to keep a little bit of tension in there to say, actually, how can we keep on improving? How can we keep on contributing? What projects could we individually, possibly collectively do to try and impact this narrative? I interview you, Seth, and the great work that you do, and I've been very blessed to interview so many people, right? And I see the wonderful things that they're doing, yet how can I interview 600 or so people, hear so many stories of positivity, of encourage people doing good, and then you look at the national narrative, international narrative, and it feels dark and gloomy. That's where the media focus. So I want to shine the light and help to amplify and grow that community that often sit under the radar, but are doing great together, doing great work, and connect those lights together. Those lights together.
Tell us just a little bit about the Molly Bedingfield experience, just so that we can kind of imagine one of the projects that you've been involved.
Yeah, so the Molly Bedingfield experience. One or two of your listeners might have heard of Daniel and Natasha Bedingfield. They're pop stars, and they're two of Molly's children. She's got 4 very successful kids actually homeschooled. Molly set up a charity which has been helping underprivileged communities. And she now focused that attention on a village, an area in Sabo. And she's built this eco-village, and there's some beautiful earthen domes that they built, which people can stay in. And there's 20 acres of permaculture. When I was there was about 33 people were employed to build and to manage the land. And they're helping to feed and provide water and buy gutterings and things like that, and water tanks, and they're feeding local school. But this area is $18 a month is the average income.
Wow.
So we went out and we carried water to communities. I took my oldest son, who's 19, he'd never seen poverty before. So he got the opportunity to make some bricks and help to build a water container, carry water out, and just get a feel for what's really going on. And they're also helping the community by, in that area, the people typically grow maize, but it doesn't grow now. Climate changes, and the yields are so poor because of climate change. So they're suggesting other crops that they could grow that do yield. So that sort of work's important. So a group of us went out to the collective. From the collective, we spent time in the eco village. We held Molly to account, actually, because she was building more domes and needed more accommodation for us. So it was really fraught her end, but she did it and she achieved it. And then we've been helping to lift her, because it's hard being leading an organisation and bringing the funds in when you're responsible for people in a different country. She travels out there for 3 weeks at a time. Probably every couple of months she's out there for 3 weeks, giving so much of herself. So we've also managed to help attract some funding, and looks like some really significant funding to the project. And we were helping give her encouragement, support, and strategy.
How many folks from the collective went out there?
It was only I don't think collective inner circle is huge. There was 8 of us went out.
That's a lot. That's a lot for a site visit like that. How wonderful. What a great kind of insight into, I know you have many people in your collective, so they're not all doing what Molly's doing, as you said earlier. But still, that story just really, I think it's poignant. It helps us to see the spirit of the work that you're doing and how your collective members are participating. So it sounds like it's a way for the collective members to re-energize, but also to get very concrete support if they're facing challenges. Both. It's like a home to return to, where you can depend on people, taking your best interests at heart, but it's also a resource. And you have so many people involved now, and that must be a tremendous resource, actually.
Well, I think that it's a resource, and it's also, I interviewed and actually Howard Bihar, the former president of Starbucks, joined us on one of my Elevation Voices calls last year, and he said something to me, because I don't know, do you ever fish, Seth?
Yes.
Yes. So I like to fish, and I enjoy fly fishing. And
okay.
And when I get the chance, and what he said to me is, the Starbucks, it grew, I think, from he had about 400 people to, I don't know, 16,000 or it was 30,000. I can't remember the numbers, but he really helped to do that. And And we're talking about leadership. And one of the things that I went away with was this idea, because we both fly fish. He said, Chris, what you have to do, and we're very good at it in Starbucks. He said, if you're when you're fishing and you hold the line too slack, or you hold the line too tight, what happens? So what happens with a fish on the end if you hold the line slack or too tight, Seth?
How you lose it.
You lose it. So what you always need to have is just a little bit of tension on the line. So what I've also introduced into the collective is this notion of what we're about is about amplifying good and supporting each other to do that. Some of us in the collective will support other leaders who are really leading the big initiatives. Some of us in the collective might be leading big initiatives. But what we're going to keep doing is we're just going to put a little bit of tension on the line to start a complete, free for all. People want there's no focus or wander away, amplifying good, because that's what we're here ultimately to do. If people are doing good work, we want to support that. We want to highlight that, and use our media presence between us maybe to help. If people need help, we collaborate and together potentially to help and support that. But all the time we're looking, how can we do more good, whatever that might mean? And it's more, at a very small level. I was talking to an amazing person who does work around peace around the globe last week, and he was saying that at a smaller level, we ask people to put a candle in the window. And all that candle in the window does it attracts people who are walking by. Why have you got a candle in your window? Well, I'm just holding out my faith to peace. However, at the other extreme, you might be running an initiative to, as one of my community members is, to bring the black communities and white communities together, because he sees himself as a white ally, and to help white leaders predominantly, really appreciate black people and culture, and help them to thrive and be successful through business in what has been at times a very white-dominated world. He's a white guy, by the way. He's fantastic. So he's doing something significant. So, but what we want to do is just hold. What are we doing? What am I doing today to do a little bit of good? Even if it's praying for a car wash for the person behind, or maybe it's connecting two people together, which leads to something special.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Or it might be launching your next big project or your next book, but we want to just keep a little bit of tension in the system, so we actually really do something.
Mm-hmm. When you imagine the future and where the Elevation Collective might go, what kinds of hopes, aspirations, visions do you have about what's possible, or what you'd like to invest your own life force into?
Yeah, thank you. What I would like to see us growing. What I don't want to do with the collective is grow it so it's so huge it loses its intimacy. There's something really special about it being very, very intimate. However, to the people that we had in it potentially has a big reach.
Yeah, I'll say.
Has a big reach. So, maybe in my mind at the moment, I'm seeing the collective of moving to maybe over time, in the next few years, to up to about 50 inner circle members. And then we can have all sorts of huge communities around us. And so we might also have our own conference and our own events. We've got all the people who can speak and communicate. We could develop, a social media team to be able to support people's social media. However, I also see us potentially developing other collectives in other markets. So I've been talking to somebody this morning who would be a great person to set up the Innovation Collective in Australia and then in the South Pacific. We struggle because we have people who'd like to join us, but the time zones aren't great. And so I could see us evolving internationally a little bit further. Then it might be a case that we get to our numbers. We might actually decide we might get to that actually 40 is enough. We should see. But then it might be a case of help inspiring other people to set up others around the globe so that we have a greater reach and impact. But as long as the impact is happening and we're starting to see it, and we'll also build more presence with media and those sorts of things over time too. There's quite a vision with it actually, but I'm also not forcing it. It's what needs to grow naturally through people loving the values. I'm always trying to increase the value all the time to the members. That's really, that's what keeps me up at night thinking, how can I do this? How can I do that? It's like, I could introduce that that person. So after this, I've got five. I've actually got 7 connections to make. That's what I'm good at. So I do lots of that.
Well, you staying up at night worrying about how you're going to broker all these wonderful relationships gives me a lot of hope. It's a very hopeful thing that you're doing. I think it spawns hope and a sense of possibility for our world when, as you say, the national and international media keeps focusing on what's going wrong, what's not doing well.
Could I just say to people, if you're listening, somebody said to me the other night, I'm not sure how much impact it can have. So have a think about that. In your sphere, it might be impacting your family. It might be impacting the community that's live around you. It could be something much more significant if you had scale. So, I've got to a point where I'm very lucky. It's a small thing for me is to connect 2 people together. It's easy for me to do that. So it's not a lot of effort. But some people think it's got to be a huge effort. So an example recently, only 2-3 weeks ago, I connected 2 amazing people together who were doing amazing work, charitable work. One of them has been feeding with his charity 5,000 people a day on the border with Russia and Ukraine. And he's Scottish, and he decided, his name is David Fox Pitt, he decided that he, when the war happened, he'd done lots of fundraising before. He got in it, he felt so horrendous about it. He's got a lovely place up in Scotland he lives. He got on a vehicle, he drove down from Scotland to Calais. I finally got to Calais through phone calls. He'd raised £90,000. And today, there have been 600 people go out to Ukraine to help.
Wow.
And the issue now is PTSD. So people are coming back from the front. Over 100,000 troops have lost limbs. And if you think in America during Afghanistan, someone told me a little while ago, it's either 39 or 49 former military personnel were taking their lives each day. I think it's down, they said it was down to about 19 now. So if we think in Ukraine, how many people are coming back and taking their lives and not being able to integrate back into society? So they started some programs around PTSD, and people need paying over there. The government doesn't have money. The government said, actually, we love this program you created so much. Please, put every troop who comes back from the front through it. But by the way, I haven't got any money to pay for it. So all I did was I connected somebody with money in America who's been doing amazing charitable work in the United States and has a large charity, lots of funding. I brought them together, and incredibly, the one from America said, we'd love to really help you fund that next year.
Nice.
And it wasn't a lot of effort. I just it was my little bit of good for the day. I was thinking, I'll connect those 2 people and I'll be there as well, just to make sure it goes well, because it might lead to something. And not a lot of effort on my part, just a little bit. So what could you do in your sphere of influence to maybe connect people, or it might be something else that could have an impact?
Beautiful. Beautiful. You've certainly got me thinking about it. That's wonderful. Thank you. So we're coming close to the end, and I've got something I want to ask you that's a little bit of a shift here, something you brought up, Everard's Meadow. Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Well, this is lovely. This was a former client of mine. I've worked with them for a number of years, a brewery called Everard's in Leicestershire, where I live, only 7 miles from my home. And the managing director, I decided, because he's got a real nice, kind streak about him and heart into the business, I interviewed him on my show. And it may be the second interview I've done with him. And he said, I had this idea of business innovation. To come and talk to my team about it. And I did. And when I left, because we knew each other in our past history, he said, Chris, we've actually got the biggest elevation project in our company history. And I wonder if you'd help me to lead it. Because I know it's not quite what you're doing right now, but knowing about everything you've got in the past is probably right up your street. So I did something unusual, and I agreed to work for 18 months for them. I did 6 to 8 days a month, and I had a room based in their office, because what they wanted to do is they had a craft brewery, and got 189 pubs and restaurants as well. And they owned 90 acres of land across the road. And the local shopping centre, which was quite large, wanted to buy their piece of land. So they thought it was an opportunity to do something special across the road. So thinking about, good, and they care about doing good for the community. What transpired was I had a great project. I got sent to the Netherlands to Heineken. I got sent to Jameson's whiskey and Guinness in Ireland, in Dublin. And I got paid for it. I visited lots of other brewers and pubs, and I saw their visitor centres, and I saw their museums, and I saw what their restaurants, and I came back and we presented to the family what could happen on these 90 acres, which turned out to be an 18-acre development. So today there is a craft visitor centre, there's a craft brewery, there's an amazing, they call it the beer hall, they wish to call it something else, but it's an amazing, huge hall which serves food, and you can have alcohol that comes straight from the factory.
Wow.
And they've got a shop, they've got a cafe, there's a cafe on the development, there's the cycle centres. That was my cycle, and didn't have anywhere to buy my cycle gear locally, so it's a bit selfish. But nearby there were other parks that you could join on something called the South cycle route, and providing a bridge was built across the canal, then you could actually cycle onto all of the other parks and villages. So there's now an amazing cycle centre, and I'm pleased to say when I went in, they said it was the best one in the country in terms of how it's done. I think there's plans for a hotel on there. So there's a beautiful, beautiful complex, and this land was closed to the local population. Today they can walk on it. The land has been regenerated. They've planted trees. They've improved it. They've created meadowlands people can walk on, walk their dogs on, and picnic on. So it's just a nice little legacy, really, for the company, and something I'm very proud to have had the opportunity to do a project that really is for good, but it's also a commercial one.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So we're at the conclusion of our time. This has been wonderful to get to know you a little bit better. If somebody wants to follow up and learn more about you, how should they do that?
Yeah, well, you can check me out at chriscooper.co.uk. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn. But if you do, please could you let me know where you found me? Because I have so many people want to connect, but often they just don't tell you where they're from, and so I don't connect with them. Right. And I'll connect with those who send me a message and explain why. That would be great. But check out the chriscooper.co.uk. And if you're interested finding out more about the collective, there's a couple of pages on segments on the Innovation Collective. You can find out about that, and you can find out about the show and how to go about it, access that. But yeah, if you really need help, then you can reach me. My website's on, my email's on there, so is my mobile, actually.
Well, thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing in the world. I mean, you are an amplifier for good. And I'm very appreciative of you and all your initiatives, and it's been a real pleasure to talk with you today.
Oh, Seth, thank you so much. And thank you. I know you're doing some incredible work, and I was so inspired by the big projects and game-changing projects that you involved in your expertise. So thank you for doing this. I know it's a lot of work, as you Monday morning things are, but I think the ripple effect, we'll never know the effect of it. But I'm sure there's a lot of people out there very, very grateful to you, and I'm grateful to you too.
Yeah, and I know this is not the end of our relationship. We'll be in touch. There's work for us to do together, one way or the other. I know it. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Seth.